Yes. Check. Check. You ready?
Microphone.
Oh yeah, microphone. You want to check it?
You know
Do you
what
want to check it this time?
Check.
Check. Mic check.
Yeah. You know what they need to develop for people like me that have like hair and stuff? Because like I used to be bald, right? But like
the back
no,
side?
they need to create like a off hook right here, or just like a back strap.
A back strap?
Yeah.
Well, I think they have headphones like that. Well, I think that's like the earphones. They're not headphones. They're like more like earphones, and it goes into. You know what I'm talking about? The ones that go. You know what? Pointless, irrelevant. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the.
Oh, we're doing the intro now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to another episode of the Side Project podcast. I'm feeling a little parched again here today, so we'll hit him with a little bit of what is it? ASMR action.
You ready? I hate every time we do it, but okay.
There we go.
Yeah,
I'm loving it. We're loving it. We're not going to waste your time this time with a long intro because, ladies and gentlemen, we have a guest here today. We have something special here today. We have legitimacy here today, professionalism here today, an author, a professor, a journalist, a voice actor, lecturer of English, and assistant director of the journalist program at Kingsborough College, founder and editor-in-chief of ReviewFix.com, former news editor at NBC Local Integrated Media, as well as national video games writer at Examiner.com, national ad campaign work with Disney,
Nintendo, and EA Sports.
And that's just touching the surface.
Not
this
touching
gentleman,
him, but just touching
it's not touching him.
surface.
It's just touching the surface of this gentleman's catalog, and it's one that he should definitely be proud of, and one that we are definitely going to touch on more. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Patrick Hickey Jr. What's going on, man?
How you doing, guys? I feel like I don't even have to be on the show now. You guys did such a good job introducing me. Like I feel like I'm on like WWE Halls of Fame and stuff like that.
There we go.
That was like some Bradshaw-esque. That was very nice.
Thank you, man.
That was
Thank
good.
you, man.
That
Thank
was
you.
good.
And it really is
good.
just touching the surface because your catalog, man, is absolutely gigantic over the course of things. First of all, how long have you been in this industry as a whole, just doing all of the things that you do?
Probably about 15 years.
15 years.
So give or take,
man.
15 years.
And within these 15 years, you guys, I'm dead serious. Go look him up, Patrick Hickey Jr. Obviously, we're going to get into it, so stay here, stay tuned. But this guy's catalog is absolutely insane, and we have so many questions. He's got books of his own as well that I'm sure you want to talk about here today, as well as we do. One of the big ones that's to stand out was your first book, The Minds Behind the Games, Interviews with Cult and Classic Video Game Developers. Before we get super into the book, I want to know, I was curious, and I was talking to Juice about it too. What made you want to get into like writing in the first place? And then what led you into writing about video games as well?
So what happened was I was 18, and the initial goal was to take a year off of high school and then try to get into the best shape that I possibly could, and then walk on to like a Division II or Division III hockey program.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
In SUNY, like the State University of New York. So I'm 6'4".
Wow.
I was like 220 pounds at the time. I'm like 245 now. But that was the goal.
Yeah.
So we were probably like 3 months after graduation, and then 9/11 happened, and then like a week after 9/11, I got hit by a car.
Holy shit, man.
And
I didn't know
and
that.
I compressed. Yeah, it's all right. I mean, I compressed 3 vertebrae in my neck. I herniated some discs to my lower back. So basically, hockey was out of the question. So, yeah. So for like 2 years, I was in bands. I sat on my ass a lot, played a lot of video games. And I'll never forget, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was like watching Batman, the animated series.
Yes, good
and,
one.
Hell yeah, I had the, my old HP Pavilion on, DSL, downloading some music and stuff like that.
Yep.
Eating Doritos, like, 4 o'clock in the morning, chilling. Probably had like Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2 on the PS2 or something like that.
Yep.
And my dad was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "The fuck does it look like I'm doing? I'm chilling."
I'm fucking chilling, man.
And he's like, "Nah,
You should have said
man,
recovering. Is what you should have said.
Yeah, well, I was.
I'm recovery. This is in recovery mode right now.
But I mean, yeah, and he's like, no, I mean like with your life, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. So then like the next day, I applied for college, ironically at Kingsborough, where I'm a full-time lectured, professor.
Awesome.
And
awesome.
so I'd always been an athlete like my entire life.
Yeah.
But then when I had the accident, it was like, how do I take like this love of sports and this love of history of sports? Because I was like a freak as a kid, memorizing like stats on the back of baseball cards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they just asked me what I wanted to major in, and it just like instinctually I was like journalism. And then from there on in, the same way that I was as an athlete, like just like attacking shit and just being like, straight ahead. I did the same thing with journalism, and within like 2 years, less than 2 years into my journalism career, I interviewed David Wright, the former third baseman on the Mets.
Nice.
I covered the Brooklyn Cyclones. I went on the road with minor league hockey teams. Like I was at NBC. I had articles and photos published in the New York Daily News, the New York Times, Syracuse Post-Standard. So it was just like I hit the ground.
Just hit the ground running, man. Yeah.
I was editor-in-chief of 2 college newspapers. But what ended up happening was I was editor-in-chief of 2 college newspapers. So I was like kind of responsible for the entire publication. So that meant like covering news and stuff, but sports was always where my heart was, but then also video games was as well. So what I would always end up doing was, I would write like the big articles that needed to be written for the newspaper, but then it would be like, oh, Guitar Hero 3 came out and I'm writing a review.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, the Mets just signed Pedro Martinez and I'm going to write that article, because I was editor-in-chief. I could do that,
exactly.
So I made sure that I always wrote about sports and video games. By the time I graduated from with my bachelor's, I started teaching. And I was still covering a ton of sports, but then it was just like I was playing video games all the time still, I love video games. So I'm just like, I need to start an entertainment website. So that's how ReviewFix started. And then I started reaching out.
For everybody that's watching right now or listening, reviewfix.com, check it out.
And I started reaching out to video game companies like Atlas and Sega and Tecmo, and saying, listen, I have a site. I'd love to review your games. And then I started interviewing developers. And then when I was at NBC, nobody wanted to write about video games, like nobody. And I was there for like a year, and I remember I was in the
excuse me, but I don't mean to cut you off. But what year? What year was this around? Because what I was going to say was like times have changed now, where video games is like one of the biggest grossing, highest selling industry in the world. Right next to music and movies. And I'm assuming that around those years back then, that time, it wasn't as big as it is today, or wasn't. I guess you could say widely accepted. You're
making me feel so old.
No, I don't mean it like that.
No, it was 2012. So
okay. Well, it was much more accepted. Yeah.
But it felt like a long time ago. Nobody, all the other writers there were a lot older, in their 40s and 50s, and I was just about, I wasn't 30 yet, and I was like, guys, I'm gonna quit, and they're like, what? No. I remember talking to my editor. I walked into the bathroom and he was on his way out washing up, and I told him, I'm like, bro, I'm gonna quit. And he's like, no. He's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, there's a game coming out on the PS4. It's been in development for PS3. It's been in development for like a year, and it's going to be the last great game on the PS3. And if you let me interview the developer, I promise you that we can get traffic. And he's like, what's the name of the game? And I'm like, it's called The Last of Us. And he was like,
yep.
So I ended up interviewing like Neil Druckmann and the whole team and stuff. And ironically, what ended up happening was the development team for God of War Ascension was there too. Yeah. So I grabbed them, and both of those articles did well for NBC. And then Diablo 3 came out on PC, so they let me cover that. And then it just snowballed. Sonic Lost World, like Epic Mickey, and I was like the video game guy for NBC. So then I got married. I ended up leaving NBC because it's like I was teaching full time and then working Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at NBC. Right. So it's like you get married, you got to make decisions and stuff. But I still wanted to write about video games, so I continued to do it for ReviewFix. But then when my wife got pregnant, I'm like, it was leaving NBC and then Examiner closing down. That was just like, oh my God. Because what happened was Examiner emailed me and they're like, in 3 weeks, the site's gone.
I hate when companies just like shotgun it like that on you,
Thousands of articles, over like 300 reviews. At one time, I was the most read writer in terms of video games on their entire site. So, and like I did a lot of professional wrestling stuff. Like I interviewed Rey Mysterio, Jim Ross, Dolph Ziggler, Daniel Bryan, all for, but gone. So I'm like, how do I write something that isn't going to disappear?
Yeah.
And the only way to answer that is to write a book. Because
That's awesome.
once the book is out, even if like your publisher dies and stuff like that, once the book is published and it's in the Library of Congress and there's copies around, if somebody really wants it, they can find it. Or if it's digital and it's on Amazon,
it's there
Amazon ain't going nowhere, you know? So I was like, I got to write a book. So then I started.
Once things are online, they're there forever. In most cases, in most cases.
Absolutely. You know, so then I started reaching out to developers and I started putting the pieces together. Because the biggest problem with video games is like, if I go to you, who wrote Romeo and Juliet? Mega easy. Yeah. Right?
Yes.
Who sings Thriller? Mega easy.
Everyone knows.
If I go, who created Grand Theft Auto?
Some people,
they'll just know, but they'll say Rockstar.
Yeah, you were just talking to me about this before we started recording.
They won't say the name of the guy that came up with the idea because they don't know. Because video game developers, video game companies don't want you to know. Yeah. Because they want you to buy their games, and they know that like developers turn over and go to a bunch of companies throughout their career. Yeah. You know, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna reach out to as many developers as possible and get them to tell me the behind-the-scenes stories of their games. And that was the original minds behind the games. Yeah. And turned out so good that we spawned like 3 sequels, and I have 2 more on the way. So nice. It's just been a really fun journey, and that allowed me to get into voice acting. And writing and editing in video games too. So like the last 3 years of my life have been completely fucking insane in like the best way possible.
Well, congratulations, dude. Definitely. First of all, because I mean, mixed with everything that you've done in your past and everything you've got going on right now with the books and the gaming world and everything. I mean, kudos to you, man. Same thing with us. Like we've been fans of gaming since forever, you know, since forever. And we're both in our 30s now, our young 30s. And actually, you just turned 30.
I just hit 30.
Yeah, he just hit 30.
He's a senior citizen.
Sorry.
And I'm sorry. And you know, I've been gaming since ever I could ever remember. And and we've always wanted to do something like this podcast and start something where we talked about like another passion that we have, such as games and stuff like that. And finally, we just pulled the trigger. We're coming up on our year anniversary, and we finally just pulled the trigger. And just like with what you said, like you just got to do it. You just did it yourself. You just did it. You just ran out there. You did it. How am I going to get something that's going to last? How am I going to get something that's going to stay? Sometimes you can't, you know, rely on all these other companies or other people. Sometimes you just got to go, hey, man, fuck it. You know what I mean? I want this. I'm going to go get it. And congrats to you, man. That's an inspiration. We were talking about it before we started recording, and Juice was saying that, like, you know, it's different from somebody who just writes a book and talks about, like, video games and their perspective and what they like and what they don't like. You actually branched out. And so for those that don't know, the book is called one of the books is called The Minds Behind the Games, interviews with cult and classic video game developers. And Juice was saying that it's awesome that you went out there and you actually interviewed people and talked to people and got their perspectives and insider information instead of just going like, yeah, I like this game and this is what I like about it, you know? And
that's one thing that I noticed because I was watching just before this got started and he first told me when you guys first started communicating, I was like, okay, so obviously like I want to do my research. I want to see what's going on, what you're really about. And then I noticed that you took the route of saying, I want to get to know the behind the scenes people. I want to make sure that the right people, in a sense, get their due credit, because that was a great example. Like for GTA, right? Rockstar. That's all I've known.
Yeah,
I never bothered.
That's the majority of people wouldn't and aren't going to look into it.
Yeah, I never bothered to know. Okay, well, like you said, who's that one guy that was sitting in the room and said, "Hey, let me pitch this idea," right? And like I thought that was just so amazing that route that you're taking, because not only like we all love games, right? You like to game, I like to game, he games, but I don't think people always take the time to say, well, it all started because this person decided to do this, and like you said, just went for it, right? And that birthed just like a whole different, different types of games for us. Yeah. And that was really good, man. I'm glad you're kind of doing that and educating people in a sense, and letting people awesome, know, like, dude. Hey, this is what you should look into. If you like this game, why don't you look into this person who even started it.
Yeah.
And it's like I have conversations with people all the time about stuff like that. I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody on Instagram, and they were like, listen, I think what you're doing, this is what they were saying to me. Listen, I think what you're doing is like super innovative, but when I game, I don't game like that. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, if I like Crash Bandicoot, then I just play Crash Bandicoot because I like Bandicoot. And I'm like, well, this is what you got to understand. Crash Bandicoot has been published by like 3 or 4 different companies, and been a ton of different teams that have worked on Crash Bandicoot. So like Crash Bandicoot 1 and 2 and 3 probably have the same team, or like the majority of the same team members. But I'm like, after that, it's very different. So you're playing a game with the same character, but a completely different team.
Exactly.
If you know about those people, that changes what you'll expect. All of those things. I'm like, the more educated you make yourself as a player, the better the experience ultimately is for you. Or you'll appreciate a game more because you'll know like what went into it or what couldn't go into it and things like that. So we're so eager to go, this game is great or this game sucks. And it's just, I like to fill in the gap in between because there's so many books out there where it's just like, well, I think that this is, and like, of course there's going to be opinion in any book. Like the reason why these games get in my books is because I think that they have a story or I think that they're interesting. So my opinions at the start. But I let the developer tell the story and I try and stay out of it as much as possible. And that's what guides the book, not, my favorite games of the 80s and stuff. Who cares what I think? So I want to tell the stories of the people that actually like slept in their car, during to finish the game. Or, in the case of Grand Theft Auto, the programmer for the PS1 version, he like was going nuts because Sony almost didn't publish the game because there was an error in the game, and he's like, well, what's the matter? And they're like, well, it's not loading at this point. That's all we could tell you. And he's like, can you reproduce the bug? And they're like, no. And he's like, well, how am I supposed to fix it? So they ended up finding like one line of code that was busted. So they're like, this is the only thing that we can fix. And they fixed it. They resent it in and they crossed their fingers and it ended up working. So that's the only reason that we have Grand Theft Auto on the PS1. Later on, Dave Cowan, the programmer, finds out that the problem was that Grand Theft Auto 1 worked on a regular PlayStation, but it didn't work on a PS2 with backwards compatibility. So this was 1998, and the PS2 was already in development. And Sony was making sure that every game that was coming out on the PS1 in 1998, 1997 would be compatible with the PS2. But they couldn't tell Rockstar this because they didn't want anyone to know that they were working on a new console.
Exactly.
It's funny how that works, man.
You so much closer to the game that that aren't on Wikipedia, that aren't on Reddit and stuff like that. That's what I want to bring to gamers. I want to connect you with your favorite games in ways that you never possible.
And hear stories that may be untold otherwise. And something I was watching, there's a video of you on YouTube where you were discussing you are a college professor, and maybe sometimes people will see that and go, oh shit, this may be difficult to read. But you wrote these books to be more easier to follow, like I guess a down to earth way of being able to read it for both hardcore and casual gamers alike, giving the stories of what made the games and the issues behind some games, and much more, just like things that you were talking about. I believe you said something about like each chapter could be read in like 5 minutes or something. Is that correct?
I mean, I take before COVID and stuff like that, I would take the bus and the train to work like an hour and a half, and I would play Pokemon because it would be great because I could save at any time, jump in and jump out. And when I would read books, it would be the same exact thing. Like I would want to read quick chapter based books, so this way like I wouldn't have to like fold the page in the middle of a chapter and then like spend like 20 trying to get back into it, because I wouldn't have the time. So I wrote these books to be digestible, and I wrote them for an audience. And that's the problem. Like a lot of people that are college professors, academics, they write to get promoted. They write these big grandiose books. They edit these 600-page books that no one reads. So my whole thing, like I wrote a book, and I wrote a bunch of books, but I wrote a book that I wanted to be read by people and enjoyed. So it's like I love, like, again, before COVID and stuff, if I would have a book signing and somebody would bring their book to me and it would be all beat up and shit, I would be like, that's great because I know that they read it.
You're taking it with you places and you're doing things and you're reading it. Exactly.
That's what I want. So so they're written in a very conversational, like, I mean, I have a nephew that's 11 and he's read it. I have another nephew that's 18 that's read it. I have other college professors in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that have read it. So it's like, it's written in a way that it can be enjoyed by anybody.
Exactly. And I've looked at the reviews and the reviews are great. The reviews are raving, you guys. I want to give a little synopsis taken from your actual book here from Amazon. For people that don't know, it features interviews with creators of 36 popular games, including Deus Ex, Night Trap, Mortal Kombat, Wasteland, and NBA Jam. The book gives a behind-the-scenes look at the creation of some of the most influential and iconic and sometimes forgotten games of all time. You guys can find it at PatrickHickeyJr.com and or Amazon and things like that. You guys should definitely go check that out. I'm curious, did you run into any troubles with companies when writing these books, like whatever that may be, like people that didn't want certain things to come to light or anything like that? Any troubles of any kind?
The only two situations that I ran into was the Tetris people. I reached out to the Tetris people, and I wanted Tetris in the book, and they were like, originally they said yes, and then they emailed me back, and they're like, listen, on second thought, we've got a lot of stuff going on, and we would like to not like work with you on this, and please refrain from mentioning Tetris at all in your book. So I made sure to mention Tetris in my book.
I love that.
Exactly.
So, because the assistant, not the assistant, the lead programmer on Road Rash on the Genesis, he was an assistant programmer on a port of Tetris. I forgot on what system, but he worked on Tetris. So I mean, I had to say that.
Yeah. Which not like Road Rash is one of my favorite games of all time.
It's one of the greatest.
There's really nothing like it today, and we've spoke about this before in past episodes. And then we were also on another podcast, the Console Kids podcast. Shout out to them; they're good friends of ours. And we spoke about Road Rash and everything too. While we're on the topic of Road Rash, I'm curious to know your thoughts on this, since you are a gamer as well, which you mentioned to me. I know I'm going all over the place with a couple of things. You mentioned to me you have like a collection of like 3,000 games.
Oh, Jesus
yeah, about
Christ.
3,000 games. I made sure probably like 2 hours ago I did a little quick man cave tour video. It's like 45 minutes, just to like if you guys get bored later and you want to check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I have a ton of games. Like I feel so bad. Like the first time my wife, like all of my games, she was just like,
wow, this.
Could you imagine that conversation, right? Like, hey, yeah, so I'm into games. Oh, okay, that's cool. Probably think you're some typical guy there. Oh, okay, whatever. Yeah. And then like walks into this massive room.
Games, books, CDs, comic books. Just like
that's awesome, though, in our eyes,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you though, in a
house and really like go like that to me. Like,
I bet, man. I bet. Road Rash and such as also like Twisted Metal and games like that, vehicular combat games are not so common these days anymore. Do you think that there's still a place and time today for those games to either make a comeback or to be like ported or available across consoles, even if it's just their actual original, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm drawing a blank. You know what I mean? Like the original actual game or a sequel or something. Do you think there's still a place and time for these kind of games?
I feel we lost that.
Yeah, I feel like we did.
It's funny that you mentioned Twisted Metal because I interviewed the producer of the original Twisted Metal for my upcoming Minds Behind Sony PlayStation games, where I interview all devs from the original Sony PlayStation, and
nice.
He was talking about that too, like just that like it's almost like this untapped genre that still has plenty of room. And the thing is, like, the world has been waiting for another Twisted Metal for quite some time.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like it's a classic. The game is the franchise is a classic.
The game, it's the story behind the characters, it's the music, it's like everything all rolled up into one. And the thing with Road Rash was, like, Road Rash was great on 16-bit consoles, and I think on the 32-bit consoles it was good too. But you started to see a shift in EA's mentality. Them taking chances on original IPs and then just sticking with licensed content. So I think some of their newer games have kind of started to change that mentality. Like they have their own original IPs now that are doing okay, but they have a lot of floundering IPs as well too. So it's like it's a big if for them.
Yeah.
And the original developers of Road Rash went off and they did that Road Redemption game.
Yeah.
And that didn't do so well.
It did not. It's got really bad reviews, I believe.
It's not a terrible game at all, but the thing is, it's just like...
I never got around to it. I want to still. I never got around to it, though.
It's good. If you like the original Road Rash, you'll like this one.
I'll have to check it out.
It's like the market has kind of moved on from Road Rash. Twisted Metal, I don't think so. I think another Twisted Metal would still have a ton of staying power because those characters are so iconic. Like Sweet Tooth, still to this day, is an iconic Sony character, And there's so much that you could do with that. Like, I remember when Rocket League came out, and I was like, man, if Sony was smart... If Sony was smart, they would let those guys reskin some of those cars as like
bringing in Sweet Tooth in Rocket League is almost like, why aren't you doing it?
If you have Rambo in Mortal Kombat, why can't you have Sweet Tooth in Rocket League? So yeah, I definitely think that like there's room for the vehicle combat genre to grow a little bit more.
That actually might even now talking about it with you might actually be a way for them to actually, like you said, bring that kind of genre back. Because if they could do it right with the right people, with the right developers and all that, and they actually give it proper promos and all that. And if people fall in love with that game, that could start everything kind of back up.
Because we're in a whole new generation,
that could give
too.
you proof and say, well, look, I mean, it's right there. It works.
Yeah.
Even in this time, why not start developing more games like that?
Which is something that I said before. I don't remember if it was our episode or the Console Kids podcast, where I said I think a way to test the waters would maybe be to do something like that. Sweet Tooth in Rocket League, see how good it does. Maybe even bring back like the old Twisted Metals, or I think you mentioned it, like a bundle, right?
Yeah.
What do they call it? Like a
Same thing.
you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm sorry. What? You cut out a little bit there.
Like a compilation.
Yeah, there we go. Like a compilation, Twisted Metal 1, 2, 3, 4,
you know
whatever,
what it was? It
and
was
bring
when
it back.
It's when we were talking about Master Chief Collection, like for Halo, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Like, if they were to
how
do
they
something
did
like
that
with Twisted Metal, where like, hey, look, we'll give you this game, this game, this game.
Yeah, test the water, see if a Twisted Metal like Master Chief Collection style works, or a Road Rash thing works.
A lot of people don't know about the Twisted Metal series. It's like Twisted Metal 1 and 2 is the same team, but 3 and 4 are not.
It changes, yeah.
You know, and then Small Brawl is like kind of like the original team kind of like got back together, and then you have Twisted Metal Black, which is essentially the same team. So like they were gonna do a compilation. The best compilation would probably be Twisted Metal 1, 2, Small Brawl, Head On, and Black, because those are like the original members of the team from Single Track that made those games so special in the first place.
I think it would be cool, and I think it's a great way to test the waters and see if there's something, or if there's room to make, an updated, new, up-to-date sequel or something of sorts. Patrick also has other books. He's got The Mind Behind Adventure Games, if I'm correct.
Yes.
One of the standout games, we talked about it already, was GTA. I noticed that you talked about GTA in that book. You got The Minds Behind Sports Games, and some of the standout games for me when I was looking at that was Tony Hawk and WCW versus NWO, which we just got done talking about that on a previous episode. I used to play WCW versus NWO with my brothers non-stop. I used to love those wrestling games like crazy.
It's still one of the greatest wrestling games of all time. It really is. The guy that wrote the afterword to the sports book, his name is Sanders Keel. He was actually the producer on that game, and he's the guy that saw the game that eventually became WCW versus the World for the PlayStation. He saw the Japanese version, and he was a producer at THQ, and he was like, "Listen, we can totally take this game, reskin it in the United States. We can call WCW. They don't have a game out. We can make this a WCW game, and we can make a ton of money." So WCW versus the World goes and sells like over 1 million copies. And then Asmic Ace is the name of the company, / the Man Breeze. That was the name of the company that eventually became
Man Breeze. That doesn't sound like a gaming company.
Yeah. They eventually became Aki. And after WCW versus the World, they were like, we never want to make another PlayStation game ever again. Like, we just want to do like Nintendo 64. So that's how you get Virtual Pro Wrestling. And that Virtual Pro Wrestling is the Japanese counterpart to WCW versus NWO World Tour. And then you get Revenge. And then what happened was, I mean, it's crazy. WCW just walked away from them, and they signed with EA. THQ was like, what the hell is going on? And so was Aki. And then they ended up signing with WWE. And that's how you have WrestleMania 2000, No Mercy. Then that all fell apart. But then they ended up signing with EA, Aki, the same people that took the WCW license away from them, and they were designing. And they were designing a WCW game in 2000. But what ended up happening was WCW was sold to WWE. So what they did was they kept that engine in place, and that is what Def Jam Vendetta became.
Damn, I did not know that.
No,
I did not know that.
And I love Def Jam.
Wow,
I love that game.
Ultimate Muscle and Def Jam came from the ashes of that WCW game.
That's crazy.
I think that process of educating people and letting people know like the story behind how certain games came to be is important, because like you said, that'll then help them appreciate the game, and that'll then maybe turn them on to a different game. And then follow that developer wherever he goes and be like, well, he did really good with this, so I should probably follow his history along and see what he does. And I think that's very important.
Can I just tell you that I love you? I don't know you. We've never met before, but like I absolutely adore you. I worship the ground that you walk on. No, because that's exactly what I want to do, because it's like these people give up so much that design these games, and most of them didn't work on royalties. They got like a salary. So imagine like Revenge, for instance, WCW NWO Revenge. It's the best-selling wrestling game on the Nintendo 64.
Yeah, it was a great game. It was fun as all hell.
The team that made it, they probably got a standard salary for it, and the company figure, Nintendo 64 games were like $70.
Yeah.
So figure 3 million copies. So we're talking like $220 million. The developers probably made like $400,000-$500,000 on the game. You probably have a team of like 20 people. So figure
broken down.
That got broken down. So the company was the one that made all the money, and the people that bled for the game.
Yeah, and made it what it is.
You know, there's been so many times where I've had conversations with developers where they're like, "Oh, I'm in a Starbucks," and these kids are talking about a game that I've done, and I jump in and I try and like educate them, and they're like, "Well, what do you know?"
Yeah.
And I worked on the game.
Yeah.
I worked on that game. That's my idea. And they're like, "No, fuck you." Blah blah blah. blah. So it's just like, I want to change that mentality. You know, I want people to really, because now, you know, like David Crane, Kojima, Jaffe, like, you know, the big names, but there's so many other people out there that have done amazing work. You know, I'm working with a developer now. His name's Tony Barnes, and he's working on a game called RDRA. It's a first-person platformer. It's really cool. It's got some Mirror's Edge to it, but it's got a lot of other crazy things in it. But he worked on Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, Urban Strike, the Mutant League games, Buffy the Vampire Slayer on Xbox, Star Wars Episode 3, Strider, Medal of Honor. Like, the guy's a legend.
Yeah, I love Medal of Honor, dude.
In the pizzeria right next to him and not know who he is.
Exactly.
And it's nonsense. Like, it needs to change. We invest so much time in video games, so much more than we ever do in movies and books and
exactly music and stuff and
movies. Yeah, like, you'll listen to a song a whole bunch of times, but like, people are playing Fallout and Pokemon for hundreds and hundreds of hours, Warcraft for thousands of hours, and they don't know anything about how they. Like, it's crazy to me.
Yeah, you're right about that. Like with movies and everything, people will know writers, they'll know producers, directors. Sometimes they'll even know like the visual effects artists and makeup effects artists and stuff like that. And then in music, it's been up and down. It's kind of been a battle as well to get producers more credit, and which it's very, very much so more common to give producers credit in music. And then a lot of producers will have their tag where it says their name in the beginning of the beat and things like that for hip hop. Now it's becoming more common, and one place that it still isn't so common is video games. It's still not as common to know all the behind the scenes stuff and everything that you're talking about. So I think it's great that you are helping bring that to light, dude, because it really, not only do they deserve it, but we deserve to know it. I mean, and we pride ourselves on trying to know as much as we can know, because we are a podcast that discusses games and stuff, but there's still a plethora of things that we don't know. So even for people like us, casual gamers, hardcore gamers, other journalists, maybe people that are hosting events, talking podcasts like us, it still helps that someone like you is helping everyone all around bring certain things to light that otherwise may not have been brought to light. Something else that I want to get into talking about is your voice acting career. You're also a voice actor, and you got a pretty damn good list going on here too. The Padre, which is available on Switch, PS4, and Xbox One. And you also served as the story editor on the Padre. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy story. I found the game on Twitter. It was really cool, and I offered to interview the guys for review kits. And I ended up being the first person to ever interview the team. So published the interview. It gets good traffic. They're happy. I'm happy. And then they're basically like, do you want to play the game? So the original Padre is kind of like an homage to the original Alone in the Dark.
Nice.
So
I remember that game.
It's a point-and-click survival horror game. Lots of text, great story and stuff like that. But I noticed like typos in the story, like very early in the game. So being an English and journalism professor, I told them, I'm like, guys, like, you guys are trying to make like an homage to Alone in the Dark, and you got typos. Like, if you want me to edit this entire thing for you, and we started to talk about a price and stuff like that. So we agree. So I get to work and I edit everything in like a day. And they're like, holy crap. And I spent like 4 hours just going through every line of text and just cleaning it up and polishing it and stuff like that. And they paid me, and I was like, okay, cool. My first paying gig in video games. And I thought I was done.
That's awesome.
A couple of weeks go by, and then they send me more dialogue. And I'm like, oh, okay. They're like, no, you're like on the team. We're going to continue to send you stuff and pay you stuff and stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, so I guess I'm like story editor now. And they're like, yeah, you're story editor. You're going to get credit for this, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. So then we're getting ready to go to Kickstarter. And they're from Bulgaria. So they're super smart, but like their English, needed work. It's a lot better. Yeah, it's a lot better now, like in the 3 years that I know them, but they're still, they need me. And I needed them at that point. So they were like, do you want to edit the Kickstarter? And I'm like, oh my God, that's like so much pressure, you know? But I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. So then they're like, do you want to narrate the Kickstarter? And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, okay. So now we're like 2 weeks away from like launching the Kickstarter. And they go to me, we're screwed. And I'm like, what's the matter? And they're like, the voice actor left. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, okay. I'm like, listen, this isn't that big of a deal. I'm like, because he wasn't that good.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, it's supposed to be a scary game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he sounds like Russell Brand.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
He's just like, walking around and talk manly
That is a
now.
great
It's like,
Russell
wow.
Brand.
And I'm just, it doesn't fit, you know?
Yeah.
So I've always been good at that in a world like Don LaFontaine voice, like, in a world, man, one tortilla.
Exactly.
So I'm like, they did something like a lot more dark, but I couldn't do that voice. Then it would just be like a complete joke, you know?
Exactly.
So I'm like, how do I marry that Russell Brand and that deep baritone? How do I marry it together? So Blowy came across this dark English road voice. My name is Alexander, and I am the portrait. And I recorded a whole bunch of stuff for them, and they ate it up. They were like, yeah, let's do it. So
That is awesome, dude.
they're like, can you record everything like today? And I'm like, oh my God. Like, recorded like 4,000 lines of dialogue. They threw it right in.
Jesus Christ.
And we ended up not getting funded on Kickstarter, which sucked. But
man.
I had done so many interviews and so many podcasts, and we got like mentions from like a whole bunch of places, and we ended up getting published by Feardemic. They picked us up. They, you know, and now we have the sequel, One Shell Straight to Hell, which is coming out at the end of the year, early 2021.
That's
and
awesome.
It's not a point-and-click survival horror. This one is a twin-stick shooter, so it's kind of like
Nice.
Resident Evil married like Contra.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's so badass. So it's just like in 3 years, I went from somebody that wanted to write a book to somebody that's written. I just finished my 5th book. I'm almost done with my 6th book, and I've been in like five or six games now. But like I'm working on like 4 other that I can't discuss because of NDAs and stuff like that. But everything changed, and like the Padre guys gave me my first real opportunity. Awesome. Just ran with it.
That's
you know,
awesome.
So
yeah, and you've got credits in Shotgun with Glitters, Croom, where you did the main character voiceover, and then the Kaiju Offensive, which is
I wrote the story for Croom.
Oh, you did? So, you wrote the story for that as well? I
story.
missed that. I didn't see that.
Yeah,
awesome.
I believe I was listening to you on Retro Wolf podcast. I think something like 3 weeks ago, or it released like 3 weeks ago. If my YouTube was right. And it was like a team of 3 of you, right? It was like 2 brothers, Peter, Jeff, and yourself. And Peter was in charge of like, I think like the animation. Jeff was something like the engineer kind of at the game. And then you did like the story stuff, right?
Yeah, it's still in development, and like COVID has kind of slowed us down and stuff like that. But like Pete, if you guys don't know who Pete Paquette is, he is the lead animator in BioShock Infinite. And he also does all the keyframe animations for Overwatch. So he's Overwatch. Super talented guy. Yeah. And I was on his podcast like 3 years ago, and at the end of the podcast, because he was interviewing me about, you know, the first book, you know, The Minds Behind the Games, and he loved it, and he pre-ordered it and stuff like that. And he was just like, yo, if you want to continue working in games, let me know. And I was just like, I'm letting you know. And,
I'm telling you right now.
This is it right now. I'm letting you know.
And then 2 weeks later, he got back to me, and he started giving me like the skeleton of this story that he had an idea for. And then he was just like, all right, I want you to write it. And I'm like, awesome, well, write what? You just gave me like, you know, like a couple of sentences and stuff like that. And, you know, this like 80s aesthetic to it and stuff. He's like, yeah, you'll figure it out. He goes, you could do it. He goes, I've read your writing. You could do it. And I did.
I trust you.
You know, and I did. So, and he trusted me, which was great, you know? So, I can't wait to get back to work on that. Like right now it's like Padre to, RDRA, Croom. And then, like I said, there's 3 projects that I've contributed to that I will get credit on. And then there's one that I'm still like working on a little bit. So next year, definitely should 2 more books in the Minds Behind the Games and tons of games.
Right,
Oh, so
you did
it's been nuts.
You did the Kaiju Offensive as well, right? On Steam.
Yeah, I was a narrator to that.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Those have actual raving reviews. That game has raving reviews. It's really good reviews, dude. The Kaiju Offensive
is super silly too.
It's a 2D top-down brawler where you fight like a giant monster. It's like an arcade-inspired game, and it's got really great reviews.
It looks like Rampage had sex with like the original Grand Theft Auto. that's and it, you know, it's like this really like fun sandboxy like PC game that anybody could play. And I play the narrator, so I'm just like, winner, loser, nice shot, you know, like kind of like Smash TV.
Yeah.
and then narration and stuff like that. But that was fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've always wanted to do voiceover work myself and everything, or do like hosting or something, you know. And I'm finding my place even more with it. I used to be involved in music and stuff, so I have a music background. So I've been in entertainment and things like that. I'm not shy to get in front of a camera or do anything like that. But this podcast has given me a shining of more of a comedic effect and show a different side of me and the gaming side of me and everything like that. And it's also opened the book for me personally. Like, wow, I see that I want to do so much more than I've been doing, you know, and it's just shown me so much more things, and passionate about so many more things, such as like voice acting and stuff. I've always looked at certain games and everything and gone, holy shit, like that is absolutely amazing. You know, like these people, the time it takes, the effort that they put into it, the you know, their thoughts, the way that they imagine a character may sound, and then they bring it to life and things like that. And something that's always stood out to me as a gamer and someone that loves, even because it's like movies as well, you know, especially when it's like cut scenes and things like that. Grand Theft Auto, World of Warcraft, there's always been just Elder Scrolls, Skyrim have always been standout games for me. What just phenomenal voice acting work, phenomenal storytelling and things like that. Do you have any specific games that you take even inspiration from when you're channeling your voice acting work and doing things?
In terms of like writing, definitely games like Celeste, Cave Story, Fallout. Those are games that definitely like have had a huge impact on me as a writer. As a voice actor, yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Like Grand Theft Auto, definitely. World of Warcraft, Diablo. Like there's a lot of games out there with great voice acting. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. Saints Row, the first Saints Row had great voice acting. Yeah. So things like that, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, man, you guys, if you guys have not heard of Patrick, I'm glad that you stayed and you tuned in and you checked all this out. If you guys want to see more, you need to go to PatrickHickeyJr.com. You can find his books on Amazon. How many books you got coming? And besides the ones that we already talked about, ones that you got coming?
So right now, the current lineup is The Minds Behind the Games, The Minds Behind the Adventure Games, and The Minds Behind the Sports Games. Those are all available now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million, wherever fine books are sold. December, January, The Minds Behind the Shooter Games is going to come out, and that's great. That's Halo 3, Metroid Prime, Wolfenstein, like tons of amazing
Call of Duty?
games.
Did you cover
Call of Duty, Modern Warfare?
So, yeah.
So it's got 39 games. It's my biggest book so far. I just finished The Minds Behind the Sega Genesis games, and that has 43 games in it, and that actually has the blessing of Sega. I spoke to Rico Kadama, awesome, one of the one of the people that worked on Altered Beast for Genesis. There's Vector Man is in there, Sonic 2.
Vector Man, oh my God, hitting my nostalgia points right now.
Tons of great games. So that's going to be sometime in 2021, and then probably early 2022 is going to be The Minds Behind the Sony PlayStation game. So that's 6 books in. That's going to be 6 books published in 5 years. So
because you started in what, 2016, I think. You said you started the first one, right?
2017.
2017.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're right. Halloween of 2016. Yeah, but the first book didn't come out until April of 2018. So
if I'm not mistaken, I think he was, like I said, the more recent one that I watched before we started talking was that Retro Wolf podcast. So like I was paying attention to some of your stuff. I think you guys were saying like Halloween's was like a really big thing for you guys and for your family, right? And that's he was discussing it. He was like, his wife was 6 months pregnant, decided to just go for it, started the book developing, right? And then it ended up being, if I'm not mistaken, it was 7 different games. I think your publisher McFarlane told you, hey, you need to do more games. And then it was supposed to be 25 that led to 36.
Yep, it was great because like I originally was going to do like a coffee table style book with a lot of pictures and stuff like that. Yeah. And they were like, nah, man, these stories are great. You need to expand upon them, and you need to get to like 75,000 words. So you need like at least 23 to 25 games to make this like a real book. So I'm like, oh my God. And then I ended up getting 36 for the first book. And now every book that I do, like the promise I always make myself is that it'll have at least 30 games in it. So, and that's been the case. So, The Minds Behind the Adventure Games has 31, but it's like 15,000 words longer than the first book because the reporting is so much better, you know. So it's been so much fun. This is like this originally was just me saying, you know what, I'm going to write a book because I'm a journalist and it's something that I should do and something that I've always wanted to do. But now I feel like that this is a part of my legacy and this is something that I want to do like the rest of my the rest of my life.
And look at all the doors it opened up for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's one thing that some people kind of need to realize, that where one door kind of shut on you, like you said, you started as an athlete. You kind of stayed within the world working with like the EA stuff and covering different side of sports, right? So you weren't so much the athlete, but you were covering sports. And then you kind of hit the switch where you're like, I need to talk to these developers. I need to talk to this person, bring this person to light. And I think people need to realize that, like, where even Chaz was saying right now, where this podcasting kind of showed him and opened it up to a lot more, right?
Yeah.
And it all started with you writing your book. And now look where it's led you.
It's a domino effect of success, man. And kudos to you and congratulations to you. And I really think that you're doing an awesome thing for the gaming community as well. And we're glad to have you on, man. We're glad to have you on. We're glad to have been able to chat with you for a little bit. We do got to let you go. We do got to get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, please go follow on Instagram Patrick at Patrick Hickey Jr. His books are on Amazon. You can get them in paperback form, and you can also get them on Kindle, correct?
Absolutely.
So you can get them there. I mean, this guy's catalog, you guys, like if you stayed throughout this whole episode, you heard everything. He's even more. He had work published in the New York Daily News, New York Times, Complex, the Hockey Writers, Yahoo, Examiner, Bay News. It just goes and goes and goes. You guys, amazing. Thank you so much for coming on, dude. Is there anything you want to say before we head out?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is, like, I appreciate my readers big time. So, like, anywhere you want to pick up the book is great. However, if you buy the book directly from me at PatrickHickeyJr.com, I will not only sign your book, but I will put goodies in there. Meaning, like, I just had somebody buy this book from Cleveland, and I not only snuck in my Walter Day trading card in there,
nice,
but I stuck in like probably like 5 or 6 like 35-year-old Cleveland Indians baseball cards in there, just because, like, you know, you're from Cleveland, you're a big Indians fan, and like I want to create a book for you that you'll remember for the rest of your life. So it's like Jeff Gabor, he was an animator on like Spies in Disguise, Rio, Ice Age. He's an amazing animator. He's a big Broncos fan. So like I ended up putting like a John Elway and a Carl Mecklenburg in his card in his book, and he ended up messaging me and he's like, "Bro, how did you know?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, I love Carl Mecklenburg. He goes, he retired in 1994. He goes, but in Madden 2001, the Broncos linebackers sucked. So he's like, so I used to make Carl Mecklenburg and put him in the game. He goes, so now every time I look at your book, he goes, I'm gonna think of like Carl Mecklenburg. Yeah, so that's what I want to do. So it's just like I've been to so many terrible book signings, or like you know, you meet like, you know, somebody at a Comic-Con or whatever, and they just like kind of shake your hand and they send you on your way. I want to connect with my readers. I want to create an experience that they'll remember for a long time, and I want them to know that like I'm not going anywhere. Like I want this to be a thing that we do for a long time together. Also, if you go to facebook.com /The Minds Behind the Games, we have a Facebook page, and I actually tell people sometimes, and I'm a little vague at first about it, but I'll be like, oh, what are your favorite like PlayStation 1 games or whatever? And no one knew that I was working on a PlayStation book at the time, but they started making suggestions, and half of those suggestions are in my next PlayStation book. And the Minds Behind the Adventure games, like I had like 28 games confirmed. I'm like, I need a couple more. So I'm guys, favorite adventure games, and somebody said Croc on PS1. I ended up there you go. I ended up finding the developer and getting it in. So like that's the thing. I want to have a connection with you because you guys are the reason why I do this. You know, so PatrickHickeyJr.com, Instagram at Patrick Hickey Jr. Connect with me. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk video games.
Definitely, man. Definitely, dude. Thank you again. Awesome, dude. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for talking with us. Again, the things that you're doing in this community and writing these books, it's a great thing for everybody, dude. It's a great thing for everybody.
Thank you so much, guys. Pleasure to be on.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you.
Take care.
Awesome shit.
Definitely excited about that.
That's really cool, dude. I'm going to have to cop some of those books and look into a lot of things more.
We should have told to judge our I'm Batman.
Oh, we should have.
God
we should have. Well, he'll see this when it comes back.
Yeah.
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
I feel like I hate Christians.
I'm not going as deep as you because you're going deeper. Do it again.
I like going all the way deep.
Oh, deep in.
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman. Oh, that one didn't come out right.
Yeah,
that one didn't come out right.
That was like a Keaton Batman.
Yeah, that didn't come out right. We know that this episode is running on a little bit long, but it's one thing that we don't ever want to forget to do, and that's this week's Cosplay of the Week. And this week's Cosplay of the Week goes to...
I'm going to cut you off. I think I'm going to do it.
All right.
This week's Cosplay of the Week goes to Zero May Cosplay.
You got to throw it up on
And this week's cosplay of the week comes to you by me stretching my arms and Zero May Cosplay.
Oh, there it goes. And this week's cosplay of the week is from The Legend of Zelda, one of my favorite games ever, and it is Zelda. It actually is Zelda.
It's Zelda.
It's dangerous to go alone unless you have a sword. Who else is excited for the new Hyrule Warriors? Her caption says, I am. This cosplay is phenomenal, man.
Yeah.
She has got every single thing down, dude. From the ears, the hair, even the way she did
crown,
her
right?
eyebrows,
I don't
dude.
know if they call it. If you guys call it
I don't think it's called. I think it's called a something. I can't remember the name. She's got. It's more of like a warrior Zelda, Hyrule Warriors type Zelda. You know, out there getting shit done. She's got the shoulders up there, dude. Yeah. Phenomenal. You see the sword that she's holding. Amazing. Wonder if that is the Master Sword. I can't tell from this current angle. The breastplate, you see the what would it be called on the hips there? A little bit of armor on the hips. I don't know what that called. Armor on the hips and the waist, the shins. Oh god, dude.
And I'm curious to see how that worked, because if you zoom in on kind of the shot that's open on this side of her leg, it doesn't look like that didn't connect. So I'm curious as to how that.
How's it sitting up? Maybe it's like a little Velcro thing, or maybe it's like sewn in. Okay. Who knows? I don't know. Yeah. May. I don't know if your name is May, but we're gonna call it May. I love you got the Triforce going on there and everything. I mean, this is absolutely amazing.
Even
you see the little
shin.
Oh yeah,
guards.
exactly, dude. And like the way the hair is braided and everything, and then oh my god. She's got a fairy there. She's got Navi there. Oh my God, that is absolutely amazing. Attention to detail. Just even bringing something a little bit more, just bringing it to life, man. The photo work was done by @AGGALEO, and I'm not going to even try to pronounce it. I'm not quite certain how you pronounce it. And the edit was actually done by Zero May Cosplay herself.
Yeah.
So, and I was looking at her Instagram, man. She's got all kinds of other Nintendo cosplays that she does,
She's
like
done Metroid, before, right?
Samus and stuff like that. And it seems that she does the props herself sometimes too. She makes things herself sometimes too. If I'm wrong about that, correct me. I know you do outsource. I've seen you tag other people and stuff like that as well. And she does a lot of her own edits as well.
Even right above, like connecting, I guess, like the shoulder pieces, that chest piece that she has right there.
The necklace, the necklace there and everything. Oh my God, dude!
Even just the fine attention to detail like that. And I've never, like I said, I was a huge Zelda fan, not as big as him, but just like I could just tell by looking at the armor, some of the stuff that you do, just the attention to detail that you did on this was
this is absolutely amazing. So you guys go follow Zero May Cosplay on Instagram and follow her photographer as well. Everything in this cosplay is absolutely beautiful, amazing. I like the little effects there, the little purple, the purple dots going on there. You know what I mean? Absolutely amazing. So Zero May Cosplay, your cosplay of Zelda is amazing.
See, I did it double-handed.
Oh man. We won't waste any more of your guys' time, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. Go check out Patrick's shit. It's absolutely amazing. It's fucking dope as hell, the way that he's doing things. And it's an inspiration, man. It's an inspiration, from the books to the voice acting and the story and the way that he did everything and the go-get-it attitude. You know what I mean? That's amazing. So thank you guys for watching, for liking, for commenting, for sharing, for doing all of those things that you do over on youtube.com/Side Project Podcast. That was out of key like a motherfucker. Go down, hit that big red button that says subscribe, because when you do, it goes and you get 100 sexy Projekt points. Thank you guys for listening on Apple, on Google, on Spotify, and all those things. When you rate and review us and you do all of those things that you do, we thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts. Juice, tell them where they can find you, man.
Captain_Juicebox.
And if you're looking for me, you can find me at IG Hates Chazzy. And if you're looking for us as a whole, it's at Side Project Podcast on Instagram. Anything else you want to say, man?
No, that's about it, dude.
All right, dude. Hit him with the pistols, man!